So it looks like I've got just about 1:30 on the clock. So is everybody in favor? We go ahead and start instead of waiting for others? Yeah. I've always been about punctuality, and I think it's really important to do that. So, all right. So again, welcome. As I mentioned, my name's Taryn. Hi. And thanks so much for coming. Like I said, I want to respect everyone's time, and I'll watch the clock very carefully. I know this is a 3-hour course, right? We're finishing at 4:30. Just kidding. Just joking. Should have seen your eyes. Like everybody was just like, "Whoa." So a few housekeeping things. I tend to do stuff like that, be kind of crazy. But in all seriousness, I will ask questions at the end when we finish. I'll leave some time so that way we can just do a Q&A. That way we all get out of here before 2:30. And a few other things too. I'm going to speak as loud as I can and clear. Is my voice not too loud or annoying yet? Or is it okay? All right. And a few other things too. When I'm speaking, please let me know if I'm going too fast and need to reverse and kind of back up, because I want to make sure that today's point is well taken and that it's worth your time coming in. I don't want this just to be another rah, like, hey, life is great. Yeah, let's go do it. But the title for today is called Seize the Day. And just to give you a component and breakdown of what we're wanting to do and accomplish here is to talk about things like, you hear the phrases, and I hear it all the time. I'm in the health and fitness industry, but you hear people say, I miss having this, or I used to have this and I don't anymore. I wish I could still do that, and I'm not able to. And some of us could probably relate to that. In fact, like I said, I'll reserve questions at the end, but let me go ahead and ask the question, and I'll repeat it so the benefit of anybody watching out there or in recording. But let me throw that out there. By a raise of hands, can you think of anything that comes to your head? I'm not going to call on you, but just anybody in here that you could think of that you used to have, you wish you did, or you used to do that you wish that you can still do. I'll raise my hand right up there, right? Yeah, 100%, absolutely. Any volunteers? Anybody want to maybe kind of volunteer in terms of, again, throwing the question out there. If you don't want to, I'll tell you this right now. Let me use myself for a second. I used to. I just lost my train of thought. I remember. I used to have a good memory. That's right. That's what I wish I had a better thing of. No, but all kidding aside, there's some things that all of us can relate to what we used to have, right? And as we go throughout this next, again, presentation as we're talking here, let's think about that, things that we used to do or wish that we could do. But before we even jump into the objectives today and tell you kind of what to expect in today's presentation, I want to kind of just play a video here. Another question for you. Anybody in the room remember the name Amy Copeland or know who Amy Copeland is? Does that name sound familiar? No? Sounds familiar, maybe? Okay. Quick 3-minute video. After watching this, probably some of you are going to probably nod your head and say, I remember her. Just 3 quick-minute video here. Okay.
Amy Copeland lives the original like no other. It's hard to even tell her story and do it justice. I can't even imagine, one day just seeing a zip line and going on it for fun, and the next thing you know, your whole life has changed.
We see the first new video of the young woman who made headlines as she fought her way back from something random and frightening.
She was on the zip line with her friends, had an accident, and may I introduce to you, for the first time in our studio, Amy Copeland.
So the biggest thing that I wish people knew about having a physical disability is that it's really more of a difference than what I would call like a disability. We all have different abilities. Some of us have strengths that other people don't have. Like some everlasting onion peeled by love. So I think that a lot of times, the media portrays people like myself as being these like amazing saintly people who could do no wrong and are just constantly striving for the best. And I think that you miss the humanness of those people when you bypass the fact that we all do have struggles and that healing is not a one and done, it's a process. And it's a lifelong process to figure out who you are and to really truly know oneself. So I think, it's important for people to know that it's ongoing. I don't think people should discount how much help I've had along the way. I didn't do this on my own, and not to be afraid to seek help for themselves, because it's just amazing how freeing it can be. And just because I have a physical disability, quote unquote, I'm different than other people, doesn't mean that I can't do all the things if I'm allowed the opportunity to. So I might have to do it in a different way. I might need certain equipment to do certain things, just like other people who have these differences. But if you give us the equipment we need, if we have a way to get to the place where we're trying to go, if it's accessible. So if you build it, they will come, is kind of what it all boils down to, and just making things as accessible as possible for people with all differences, not just physical disabilities. And one thing that I always tell people is a great way to heal if you're ever suffering is to go help other people. And the person that you really help the most is yourself. Another way that I try to give back in the community is just by my presence every day. When I live in an area that's very walkable, and when I walk down the streets, I look people in the eye and I say hello and ask them how they're doing, and I try to connect with everybody that I meet. And I would say that like tiny, subtle just connection makes a huge difference, actually. And just trying to emit and radiate that light and acceptance and openness for other people to see, and hopefully to model, a way of being. You flip-flop and I wild out. Can you believe it? Can't believe it.
Now, does anybody remember that at all? Show of hands. Like I see a few. Yeah. From Atlanta, Georgia, actually, Amy Copeland, and what a story, huh? Anybody in here have a worse off than her in terms of, I wish I had that? That's pretty hard, isn't it, right? So today, as I mentioned, the objectives that we want to go over include something that we can all relate to. We're all in here getting older every day, aren't we? I mean, every single one of us, right? One of the things, to be very transparent and open, I wish, I just miss being a kid, to be honest with you. I wish waking up, December 25th, Christmas morning, and looking at the presents saying, wow, Santa left me all this stuff, this great, And so we can all look back and say, well, I wish I had that, or, I miss being able to do this. But a lot of it is in terms of when we're aging, how to treat, these different objectives that we're looking at. And what do I mean by healthy aging? This presentation is going to be geared towards people who are baby boomers or more, okay? So in other words, anyone born either from 1946 through 64 or even earlier. Anybody in here within that age category? Maybe a few, right? Yeah, right? So that's great, but if you look at that young girl, and for those that remember, she was only in her early 20s when that happened, right? It was about 10 years ago. And she started up a nonprofit foundation, and it's just amazing. Had that not happened, she wouldn't have, done that. And we have often ask, wow, if she's, done all that, here I am, whatever age I am. And, how do we get healthier as we age? Those are some of the questions that are underlying. When you look at the population in this country, are we getting healthy? That's an important thing to ask. We'll talk a little bit and discuss about some of the contributing factors and also the barriers as well of healthy aging. And then also, most importantly, I think, to sum it all up, when we get to our conclusion, let's relate it to ourselves. There were a couple people that walked in that first asked the question, what am I going to learn that I don't already know? Or what am I going to do for myself specifically to better improve myself? That's my goal for you while you're going through this presentation. Just put yourself in the perspective of how can we get better? And one of the books that I'll throw out, and you've probably heard of this one, called Younger Next Year. It's been out for a couple decades, written by an attorney and a medical doctor. Again, it's called Younger Next Year. It's been a bestseller. They really put the emphasis on keeping it simple and keeping an easy plan of literally becoming younger next year. That's what we can do, all of us, no question about it. Like no matter what stage of life that we're in, we're able to do that, certainly. And so just to give you a clear perspective of what to expect, this is what the challenge will be that I'm going to give to each and every one of you. A great quote here, again, a lot of us in life look at things and just say, well, gosh, I really regret that. I shouldn't have made a dumb decision, or how stupid was I? Why did I end up doing this? And we look back and regret, right? Or things that are even not in our control, things that we have absolutely zero control over. And we just, why was I put in this situation? And you can really get philosophical and religious and just think, well, gosh, whether or not, we are of a godly belief or atheist or wherever we're in our life, I think universally most people are thinking of a purpose in life, right? Otherwise, what is the purpose? Why are we here? So not to get too deep, but again, just kind of superficial look at it for ourselves. Hopefully, whatever stage we're at right now, we're happy where we're at in our life. We're very happy. Everything was meant to happen for whatever reason to get us to this point right now, even being here with me today, right? And again, I'm very happy and thankful that you came, because this is what I like doing for a living. In the health and fitness industry, too many people hear a lot of misconceptions and myths and urban legends and such, but it's so fundamental. And what I like to do when I'm teaching, because not only I'm a personal trainer, but I also teach at a couple of universities. I'm a doctoral research chair working with PhDs. And so when I'm doing that, my goal is for people to learn and people to grow. And I think that's important for us too, is to learn and grow. We can never get to the point where you can't learn enough information, I believe. And so a lot of the presentation will include different statistics that are, kind of eye-opening, but some of them might be like, wow, that's interesting, or I hadn't thought about that. But what's kind of going on, and we'll get to a graph here in a couple of slides later, we've seen that all of us used to not live to the age that we are collectively, especially in the United States. So in other words, what I mean by that in layman's terms is that we're all living a lot longer than our parents, than our grandparents, and so forth. The reason is because of things like the great advances of medical technology and just, taking care of our lives better, just knowing that longevity is very important, living pain-free. And that's so important, to everybody, is just how do I live a life so that I'm not hurting and that I could go to work or whatever I'm doing, if I'm retired, or I could play with my kids or grandkids or what have you, to where I'm not waking up and hurting and I could just enjoy life. Because I really believe that it's so important for us to just take into account that, again, getting back to the purpose of life, we want to just enjoy it and just have fun and be able to make a difference. I believe that it's important for all of us, no matter where we're at, is to be a positive influence in the world and contribute to society. And that's what I believe the baby boomers are, us in this room. I strongly believe that when you see the different ages that have come through, if you think about, our generation of baby boomers, pretty much seen so much in the last, say, 60 years or plus since we've been here in terms of what's happened. What just happened in the last 3 years? We went through a global pandemic, right? Man, that's crazy. Before 2020, did any of us think that we might live through something like that? Because that was the first time for all of us to live through something like that. And so when we look at things, again, from a 50,000 viewpoint and just up in the air looking down, we can just see that again, some of the benefits and good things that are going on in life is that we are living longer and we can take care of ourselves better. And the last time I was here, actually I've both spoken here previously as well as the Fayetteville location, the main themes that I was speaking on was the first time when I talked was exercise and why it helps increase longevity, but also help us live pain-free, and also to where our optimal health is achieved. Same thing with nutrition when I spoke on eating correctly and avoiding bad habits, why that's so important and crucial to adhere to. Same thing with today. So the whole, focusing on the mindset today, really. Because again, when it comes down to it, I'm sure everybody in here, if I asked you and I said, what would be healthier if I had a plate full of carrots and cut vegetables and cucumbers on one side or a bunch of box of donuts on this side, which would be healthier? Everybody in here would know that the donuts are healthy. No, I'm just kidding. Right? They definitely taste better to most of us probably. But again, we know what to do, like dietitian-wise as well as physically too, that we know that exercise is important. I don't need to preach that you need to know how exercise works, but rather just give you some data that's current and contemporary as well. And so when you look at healthy aging as a whole, and what's encompassed in that, well, there's really good basic 10 fundamental areas here to look at. And we've seen this as well, by the way. None of us are exempt from, I just named a couple of them up there, but there's other things that are very important as well, too, as we know. And that's what place like this, Fayette Senior Services, is wonderful being able to provide, because one of the things that they do here is the number 3, like what we're doing, is this social engagement. It's so important. Everybody, as we know, is afraid to grow old, aren't we, right? Everybody, and maybe not too. If some of us are already past that point and know that we're happy where we're at, that's even better. But in the back of mind, in American society, in this country, when you turn on the television set, you see commercials for Botox and how to lose weight, Ozempic, Mounjaro, and I could lose a bunch of weight. I heard that this person did, and I could go get this liposculpture and also be able to, this is the best hair dye, so my hair is not gray. We hear it all, right? That whole business, by the way, in America's terms of healthy aging, is as what I just named. Again, like the Botox, the supplements, the nutritional, things that you can do to stay younger, and the anti-wrinkle aging cream and such. We're talking, and I'm being conservative on this number, but at least $300 billion going into that. And what can we do with that amount of money? I mean, that's absurd, right? But again, what my point is that in society, culturally, what we see is that's so important, that healthy body image. On social media, we see the people out there, the influencers on TikTok and what have you. What are they doing? They're doing selfies. Look how pretty I am. Look at this new dress. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But what my hope is that as a society, we can really just see a little deeper, that there's probably something a little bit more important than the superficial things that we see in terms of, what's important. So what's important that we see out there in the hundreds of billions of dollars that goes into that, again, that's hopefully something that we can kind of figure out what's more important to us. More important to us would probably be spending time with family. And as I just mentioned, maybe our friends, being in a social environment, being able to do things like this. I threw the question out there, what can we not do anymore? With the clients that I see every day and that I talk to over Zoom or what have you, whenever I'm working with my clients, I'm always not looking at that half glass empty scenario. I'm trying to encourage them to say, well, what do you have still? What can you still do? That's the emphasis to focus on, which we just saw a couple of slides ago with the young lady who was mentioning what she still has. I mean, gosh, I can't imagine, switching places and being in that predicament, right? And it's the same thing. Hopefully, 100% of us would not want to switch places with anybody. Think of this person that you just emulate and has idolized all your life, your favorite movie star or whatever, sports celebrity. Hopefully, we wouldn't want to switch places with them, because we really love ourselves and where we're at. And that's what's so important. And I think that people drop the ball when we just get influenced by influencer with social media and such things like that. And again, I mentioned, exercise is so important, and that really is the key to living better and healthier. There's no question about it. And as I mentioned a few slides ago as well, too, it's never too late to learn a new activity. That's one of I heard an 88-year-old gentleman telling me that before I was preparing for this, some advice on what he would share. And he's always trying to learn one new activity a month, just that he's never done in his whole life. And that included things like, just simple things. He never played pool, so he went to go find a pool hall and just shoot some pool, whatever. He was saying, I've never played Sudoku. What is Sudoku? And he picked it up and started learning. So again, the cool thing, and again, in borrowing his story for a second, all of us in life, as I mentioned, when we're a child, we get to live as a kid, and it's so much fun. But then we have to grow up and we have to earn a living, right? We're supposed to maybe get married or have a family, raise kids, and really focus on our career, or help our spouse focus on our career so we can have the house and the car. And that's so, that's again so important and vital for the majority of our life. But then maybe we retire, or we're at the age where we're not working. And when we get to that point, then what? Okay. Well, at that point, life doesn't end. We could have things that we lose. We could lose a spouse. That could happen. We could lose a close family member that's not with us that we really miss. And again, that doesn't mean that life ends there. Life continues, in fact, and it's up to us to how we're going to live the rest of our life with our good energy. That's what the key is just having that really, really good energy. I mentioned this stat just a little bit ago, and we saw it on the other slide, that what's going on right now, and the interesting correlation when you look at children versus adults who are 65 or greater, and you look at, this went back about 6 or 7 years, and it goes all the way up to about right here, is the projection of the baby boomers living longer, as I mentioned. And they're outnumbering the number of kids that are in the country, the United States. So it's really fascinating to see that, because, you know, when you look at something like that, it's just really, really, inspiring, because we know we have the capability to live longer now than, again, past generations did. That's a great advantage that we have. And who knows when it's going to stop. I mean, 20, 30 years from now, doctors might say, hey, we can have people live well into their 120, 130s. Who knows? I mean, maybe. I mean, but some of us maybe are thinking that might be, just to keep living life, just to enjoy life. And that way you... But, you know, in all seriousness, though, with being able to enjoy life, you know, it's so important. And I'll give you another recent example. Just, gosh, an hour before I came here, I went to Publix and ate some lunch. And when I was getting something at the deli, there's a lady, she was probably, I would guess, in her 60s, maybe 70s. And the person had asked, they said, are you on your lunch break? And she's like, I'm on my retirement break. And I just thought, I was like, that's so good. I was like, I'm going to share that later here. And I wish I could share her energy with you, because she was so like bragging, like, yep, I haven't worked for whatever years, I don't remember, but she was just like telling the deli person, they were just laughing, and just, and later I get to go to the hair, salon and all that. And so great, you know, again, wherever we're at in life, if we're retired, again, that does not mean the end. And in fact, I'll use my parents for a second. When my dad retired, and he's only in his early 70s, he said he's gotten more busy now than he ever was when he was working. Like, the days fly by really super fast, and same thing with time, in terms of time perception for him versus when he was working. So it's just incredible how we can keep a busy schedule. And, you know, why is it important as well? You know, why eat better? Why exercise? Why spend time with people and family and such? These are the different categories that we look at of what's going to go, you know, in a positive direction. Should we concentrate in that direction, right? And so, for example, if we are trying to live healthier, then we won't hopefully be as much of a burden on our children's children. So that way they're not having to put us on long-term care and pay for long-term assistance and such. The goal for us is, you know, one of the things that could help is to live so healthy that we live, you know, a great, fruitful, long life. And when it's time for us to go, then again, we haven't put a burden on anybody watching over us, because we're very independent. You know, I mentioned, again, a few minutes ago, everybody has the capability to walk in here, and that's wonderful. You know, everybody has, you know, good vision and good hearing, and we're able to partake and engage and laugh and joke in the presentation here. And so it's so important to really focus on things like that. You know, what can I still do, and what do I still enjoy in life? And like the gentleman I just mentioned too, like, what haven't I done that I could still try, you know, to do? You can always go that direction as well too. And what's great in research and, you know, education, that's something that I work on a lot, is that, again, great strides are working on that. As I mentioned, we just got done with a really serious pandemic, and we're kind of maybe still in it, I don't know. But a lot of research has gone into something that's been happening in the last 3 years with the spike of suicide and depression and anxiety, especially not only older, but also younger people as well, too. And a lot of older people, they found, have just gotten so lonely and just don't want to be alone. And that's what they fear, that some people might fear, well, what's going to happen the older I get? You know, what now? And who am I going to have rely on myself? All the more important for us just to get into our intrinsic motivation, so to speak, and really love ourselves and figure out, how can I really take care of myself and care about what I'm doing, like my sense of purpose, you know, and what I could do to contribute, again, to society and contribute to helping others as well. I thought this graph is very interesting, because what's happening here, if you just look at, for example, you take somebody who is a fit teenager, has similar conditioning as an athlete in their 50s, right? Or let's just take this one down here, an out-of-shape 55-year-old similar to an average 65-year-old or a fit 75-year-old, right? And then the other one, a fit 55-year-old, slightly better shape than an average 35-year-old. Again, age is just a number. It's just relative. And using a personal training client that I was training once, she's a millennial. And at one of the fitness centers that I see her at, most of the primarily population is senior citizens, either ages 70 or above. And there's a walking track around the gym, and it goes about 1/9 of a mile. So if you went 9 times, you would get a mile done. And I'm walking with her, and I'm walking at her pace, by the way. When I'm with my clients, I don't push them too hard. I'm just walking, maybe just, assertively to say, hey, let's keep going. And as we're walking on that track, we hear someone behind me, excuse me, and look back, and I'm not kidding, but this lady had to be in her 80s with a walker, and she passed us, right in front of us. And my millennial client looked at me, and she's like, whoa, and she's like, I guess we better pick it up, huh? And again, that's a great illustration. Seriously, whenever stuff like that happens, I look at that, I'm like, that is just fantastic. That is wonderful. I mean, what an inspiration. And another example, one of the clients that I worked with, when I met with her, I said, and again, it's all about goal setting. What are you looking to do? What do you want to accomplish? And she was basically telling me, she's like, you're going to laugh, but I don't care about bicep curls or squats or learning how to do lunges and all. She's like, I just want to learn how to get up off the floor. And some of us in here aren't laughing. I'm like, yeah, you know what? That would be a good exercise. Just getting down on the floor and then standing back up is an excellent exercise. That's very functional. And it works really well, by the way, too. It works core, strength, cardio conditioning. And again, it would be very helpful functionally later, because if we need help getting up off the floor or what have you, then that's so, again, wonderful example of an exercise for us to be able to do. And by the time, and again, not bragging, she can do 10 of them in a row now where she couldn't even barely do once. And again, that's not on me, that's on her. All I am is just a coach. She's the quarterback doing all the heavy lifting and grunting. I'm just there kind of cheering her on, like, come on, you could do it. So we know that whatever goal we have, and whatever age we're at, there's no excuse, and there really is none. So if you see this comparison, same age, these two ladies are both 74 years old, right? And so the choice is ours, basically. That's what this is telling you. I mean, you see an illustration, and unfortunately, and this won't surprise anybody in this room, but most of the work that I do when I go to the assisted living homes and retirement places, when I go in, just to give you a visual, most of the people that are in there are sitting down, right? They're sitting, and they're just sitting watching TV or on their phone or just sitting doing nothing. And that's not good. One of the most important things to change is to tell those nursing assistants and staff and managers and what have you, and say, get them to move. Like, even if they're wheelchair bound or ambulatory, get them to wheel down the hallways, get them on the walker or the stick and walk with them and get them moving. They should not be, the majority of the time I ever go in there, it's the same thing. They're all sitting down. And that leads me to having an impromptu exercise for all of us. So I hope everybody's ready and warmed up, because this is going to be challenging. We're going to see who really is fit today, okay? It's not going to be push-ups. It's not going to be burpees, if we know what those are. But I'm going to challenge you, and I'll tell you why I'm doing this exercise in a second. Everybody stand on up, okay? Stand all the way up. Take a deep breath in. Breathe it out. Have a seat. And go back to your chair and sit. Yes, very good. Excellent. Mm-hmm. And sit. Yep, that's it. That's all I want. She's saying that's not hard enough.
But the main thing you're leaving out is mental. Hello, they got it.
The mental component.
Mental.
And that's so important as well. You're right. There's a question that shows, she mentioned that, again, she touched on mental activity and mental focus, and that's really, really key. You're right. Me, in my industry of helping push people, they can do the work. They don't need me. They don't need my form or to count for them. Maybe the first couple times they do, but after that, I've got clients for 10, 15 years I've been seeing. They don't need me for that. They need me for this, just to help get going. Some of them have that accountability partner. Like, if Taryn wasn't here, I wouldn't be doing this right now. Or if I didn't have a session booked with Taryn, or if the gym wasn't there and all my friends weren't there, I wouldn't be doing this exercise because I want to do this class, what have you. It's a lot of, and by the way, that we're going to talk a lot about that when we near the end of the presentation as well, and is the mental factor that goes into it, because it's all psychological, and that's really more important than the physical. There's a question that's often thrown, and you'll see a couple of different examples. To use one, for example, would you rather, if you had to have the unfortunate choice, lose your mind or lose your body if it came down to it? A lot of us have thought about that. And it's like somebody with, for example, let's just use Alzheimer's, for example, because I see that a lot. They can be very fit and they could live to 100, but they could have had Alzheimer's since they were 50 and just completely, unfortunately, been very detrimentally affected by that. So, in a sense, losing their mind in that case. On the opposite hand, you can have somebody who's just literally somebody with Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, we've heard of that. It's just the opposite. They have full 100% function cognitively in their brain, but their body's just shut down, which would be worse, right? A lot of us have thought about that. But all the more reason, both physically and psychologically, to strengthen ourselves, like the body and the mind, for sure, no question about it. Very, very good point. And what about what's going on in this country right now? Are we fit? That's a good question. That implies, what do you mean by fit? Interesting stat, because as I mentioned, when I was at the Fayetteville location back in June, that's only a few months ago, so I'll go ahead and use this data for a second. Almost 40% of the United States population right now is obese. And I didn't say overweight, by the way. That's a higher number. That's 2/3. About 66% of all of us are overweight. But the scary thing is 40% of us are obese, meaning we have a body fat percentage greater than 30%. In other words, almost a third of our body is just nothing but fat. We're seeing more and more of that. Unfortunately as well, the graph on that looks linearly like this as well. It's just going to keep going. In fact, by 2030, the estimation is to be about 50% obese, not overweight, 50% of all of us. So the United States will be half fat by that time, by 2030. That's scary. That is really, really scary. And it gets back to the whole body image thing, by the way. It's a balance. One hand, I told you that, we focus on it too much and, it's okay, that healthy body image. But on the other end, we have allowed that to become almost an epidemic now, where we treat it like, it's just a normal thing. And you go to the medical doctor and, they'll give us the supplements, the high blood pressure pills, the cholesterol medication, and that's how we're going to take care of it. Unfortunately, that's what most of us are geared towards. But what it really comes down to is if we exercise more, and we exercise harder and smarter, and we exercise for longer periods of times. The acronym FIT, some of us have heard that, FIT, frequency, intensity, time, when it comes to exercise. If you increase all of those, you think about them as levers, that's what's going to help. And on the nutrition end of it, when I spoke about this last time here, I was mentioning about the 3 levers in terms of how can we eat better? What's right? There's so many diets out there. Which one's right? Which one's wrong? All of them have an underlying theme, a common denominator, if you will, and those 3 things include quantity, quality, and timing. So the timing of when we're eating, what are we eating, and how much of it are we eating. If we control those 3 levers and improve all of those, that's going to get us to live longer, that's going to get us to be healthier. We'll be the healthier part of this statistic right here in the United States. Another interesting chart, infograph here, just to take a look at. The baby boomers, not confident their communities will help them age successfully. Some of us, when we see that, we're thinking, do I agree with that? That's a question to ask. In other words, when we think about ourselves and we look at ourselves 10, 20, 30 years in the future, are we 100% confident that our society, that our country, our government, our officials are going to be taking care of us? And unfortunately, most of us don't. We don't think that way. But that's not a bad thing, I've always thought that a natural fear is okay sometimes because it kind of prepares us for the worst. I'm not saying to be a pessimist. I'm not saying to just think negatively all the time. I'm just saying that if we're more realistic in ourselves, that accountability, who's going to take care of us, when it really comes down to it, us, I, me, that's who's going to take care of us at the end, towards the end. Because again, we can't count on anybody being there. Things happen. You just never know. We can't count on tomorrow being here. Again, what if we have another crazy pandemic and the COVID mutates, heaven forbid, and makes us all quarantine? Remember in March 2020, we all had to go inside and isolate and we couldn't be around people and we were supposed to be 6 feet apart and all this craziness. If that happens again, again, that would be just a catastrophe. So we are so, we have to be grateful, not to get too off the rails here, but really, when we wake up in the morning and we take our first breath and all the way through the day and we go to sleep and take our last one before we go to sleep, it's just so important to be really grateful and thankful because, again, we're very fortunate when it comes down to it. We are in the greatest country in the world, and we're able to, the richest country in the world, being able to enjoy all of the fruits of all the, things that are available to us as well. And in active aging is what this one's called. You have a different parameters of things that are kind of encompassing what does the active aging look like. And so this kind of intertwines with one of the slides previously. How can we take care of ourselves better, in terms of the determinants and all the other things that both we can control and outside forces that we can't. So, again, the psychological part of it's so important as well, because I see it when people with exercise or eating right. I mentioned the example before of the healthier option versus the donuts. And that's, again, so hard for people to choose from because it starts at an early age. All of us, there's another good book called The Hungry Brain. All of us are wired from the very beginning to like sweets, sugar. What do we have going on in about 30 days from now, roughly? Right, yeah, exactly. Halloween's going to be here in about a month. And we reward the children by letting them go. By the way, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. But in our society, Halloween, Christmas, birthdays, every single event, it's all about, well, let's celebrate and gorge. Let's have all this, crazy good food together. That's how we celebrate. Where there's a funeral, let's go mourn. All right, now let's go eat. There's a wedding, same thing, reception, right? You get the point. So there's always something that's going to be either a determinant or in that case a barrier to us being able to be in that active aging category. And so it's all about choices, and it gets back to the psychological choice of knowing, we know what we know from the point when we're born to in schools and then living throughout life. And some of us don't have a choice in that too. Some of us could have an affliction or an autoimmune disease happen or something that's just totally out from left field. And we just have to adjust, just like the lady in the first video that we saw on the presentation as well. And so that brings us to the barriers. There's always an excuse. I hear this all the time in exercise. Whenever a client sometimes will cancel, the weather's really crummy, Taryn. It's really bad. Let's not work out today. Oh, okay, that's fine. And then the next week is like, Taryn, it's beautiful outside. I'm going to enjoy the outside and just sit out here and read a book. Let's not work out today. I'm going to cancel. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And there's always something, right? Something gets in the way. Priorities sometimes will get interfered upon. Me, myself, my trick is I have to exercise first thing in the morning. That's the only time I can work out, because if I don't, then it's not going to happen. And some of us are different. I used to be the opposite, by the way, before I said that. I used to say that I would work a full day and then I would go in the gym and then get my workout in and call it a day. I just can't do that logistically anymore. Now it's changed to where I have to get up very early, do the workout. And I encourage, again, anybody who, whatever timing works best for you, wiring-wise, that's when you should work out. The question I always get at these presentations is, well, what is the best workout? What's the best exercise? Is it the bike? Is it the recumbent machine? Is it the rower? My answer to that is always the best exercise, really, out of all of them is the one you're going to do. You've heard that, right? Yeah, the one that you're going to do. If you like the bike, then keep doing the bike. If you like the rower, you hate swimming, then stick with the rower. And that's the key, is that there won't be any excuses for all of us, wherever we're at. We say, okay, I've got the usage of, either most of us probably live in or around this area, these beautiful trails and cart paths and everything, taking advantage of that. Being in Atlanta, Georgia, or near it with this beautiful weather that we've got as well, too, wherever we're at. And again, just there's a lot of things that we look at that, one of the things that I always hear in terms of, working out's very expensive. I hear that one a lot. I don't have the money to join a gym. I can't afford a $2,000 Peloton. That's out of my budget. And my answer, and again, I'm sure a lot of us in here could think of an easy response to that. Okay, great. Well, let's go ahead and pull up YouTube, on the video and go along with this group yoga class that's going on, right? Or let's go to a public library, by the way, has a huge resource of free exercise videos, DVDs that we could watch. or if you, again, the great thing about the internet is just that it's all right there at the, everybody's got an iPhone or an Apple or Samsung or what have you. You just pull it up and all you need is an internet connection. Is join on in and just do a virtual workout for free. And there's so much free information on YouTube or on the internet that at our disposal, at our fingertips, literally, that can stop those excuses or the reasons why we can't exercise. And so the question is literally, is exercise medicine? Anybody in here believe exercise is a medicine? Yeah, all of us should put our hands way up there. We know it is, because when we go get a physical, when we go meet with medical doctors or what have you, they'll do their basic, baselines and blood pressure and heart rate and, diagnostics. But what are the things that are in control of us? We've seen them on the slides here and how we can live better. And a lot of, again, I mentioned, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. You'll hear diets that are the cool thing now, and take this medication and we'll lose 10 pounds instantly and such. And really, we know that exercise and eating healthier is a lot of hard work. It really is. So it brings me back to talking about what we're first starting with in today. When we think about what we can do versus what we can't do, or what we still have versus what we have lost or can't no longer do anymore, it helps us change that mindset, that mental capacity to really focus on what's important in life. And again, what is important in life? To us, it's all different to each of us. It could be some of those things that were on the wheel earlier. It could be our family. It could be our finances. It could be work. It could be, how do we manage stress? How do we interact and engage and have a social life, so to speak? And it's just so important. So this slide right here, a lot of information going on. What does the research show? So these are some of the interesting statistics that have to do with how does exercise help us age more actively and healthier, right? So some of the percentages up here, right? Seniors who engage in moderate exercise can add up to 5 years to their life expectancy, when you exercise and you work on strength and balance, you could avoid the risk of falling by 30%. Physical activity can lower the risk of cognitive decline. People exercising, 38% lower risk of cognitive impairment, and so forth. You could read the rest of them up here as well. The statistics have been around, and the data has shown for the last, literally since a little after World War II. When the industrial age and everything was happening, with people realizing that there's a correlation that, hey, this stuff really works. If we live healthier, we could live longer, and that's very true. And so in terms of being able to work, again, just for health, generally speaking, it's just really important to engage in some type of physical activity. I highly recommend that. And also continue eating properly with good nutrition. And again, just to kind of scratch the surface on there for a second, I mentioned it a few minutes ago with, and again, we're talking about the physical components. Exercising, you can try to aim for 3 to 5 days a week, maybe about half an hour to 40 minutes each time of some type of cardio aerobic exercise. What I'm talking about is walking, biking, swimming, jogging, what have you. 2 to 3 days a week, you want to focus on the strength training components. Anything that you're doing, sets of repetitions continuously, working the muscle group areas. And those ideally would be spread out. They wouldn't be a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then you're done. It'd be better if you did like a Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, so forth, in that example. So that way the muscles have at least a couple days to repair after you've worked them. And in terms of flexibility, so important, right? Just when we did that sit to stand earlier, you probably would have felt a little better because I heard some laughter, and again, it just breaks the ice, so to speak, of the body, because when the body's moving, again, that's the great benefit, that the body's in motion and it improves, and it's in a better optimal health. The eating portion of it, the aspect I mentioned earlier, quantity, quality, and timing. Again, it's what are we eating, how often are we eating it, and when are we eating it? What kind of quality does that look like? That's so important to pay attention to when we're thinking about nutrition. And again, we use that real basic example. We know to stay away from the sugars and the simple starches, and stay away from the saturated fat and watch the carbohydrates. Not eliminate carbohydrates, just watch them, carefully, making sure we're not taking too much of them. Making sure we get enough protein and iron and micronutrients are just so important as well. The minerals, drinking enough water. We could do a whole hour on water in here alone. Our bodies are made 60 to 70% of water. And so it just makes sense that if we need to keep rehydrating, and none of us drink enough water usually. I always find that as a constant, that, I wish that, myself included, by the way, that water is just so, important to continue. And to the psychological aspect of it as well, too. Again, I mentioned it's so important to really focus on intrinsic motivation, because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of external factors we can't control. For example, if your favorite activity includes power walking with your friend on a Wednesday at 8 a.m., all of a sudden it's just a downpour. Well, there's nothing we could do about that. You could go out there and walk, but probably wouldn't, because it wouldn't be enjoyable most likely. And so the key in that case would be like, okay, we're going to change this up a little bit. We'll pivot and we'll go ahead and walk laps inside. We'll go to the nearest Sam's Club, Costco, or mall and just do some laps all around and do it that way. When we're thinking about a healthy mindset, it's so important and critical to avoid things that are negatives in our life that we hear about. That video that we started with, she could have easily quit and wished upon death and gone through that process of saying, why did this happen? It's not fair. It's totally unfair, and I've been cheated. And she didn't go that route. You could see she went the other way. It's either, in her case, like a path of destruction or a path of reconstruction. And she chose to kind of just say, well, now what can we do with this? What do I have? And it's just amazing, when you see examples like that, which is just wonderful. It's just great. So we're coming towards the end here. And I mentioned this too at the beginning. I had challenged everybody in here to think while we were talking about how this applies to ourselves. So my question to you, right now, is just think about, are you exercising enough? Are you exercising hard enough? Are you exercising long enough in those workouts? Are you eating the best you can? Best implying meaning healthiest. Some of us, I asked a client, I said, one of my clients, unfortunately, loves to drink alcohol. Fine, that's okay. And I asked him, I was like, how'd you drink this weekend? He said, I drank really good. I drank so good. I had at least a couple. And I was like, okay, never mind, you can stop. So again, we have to define what that means. But I want to challenge everybody in this room to think about and start focusing on the mental component of saying, I control my body. I have free will intrinsically to be able to determine what I want to eat, how I'm going to live my life, who I'm going to associate with, how I'm going to budget my money, what I plan to do with social engagements, what parties I want to go to. When I go to those parties, what selections am I going to make? How am I going to avoid pitfalls and bad habits like smoking and drinking and things we know we shouldn't be doing? And just being able to be smarter about living life to its fullest and to its richest extent. And so that's my, again, biggest challenge to you is just figure out in your own ways on this slide right here, just like that 88-year-old gentleman, think about new things that you've never done or that you used to do or that you'd like to do again and you have the capability of trying, go for it. If there's something you've always wanted to do, like anybody in here have ever wanted to skydive out of a plane? Me neither. Yeah, but if you had, then that's, okay, well, there you go. But, there could be anything that you could think about in terms of challenging yourself. That's the gauntlet, so to speak. Like coming here today was hopefully, if nothing else, if there's just one thing to leave and walk away from here, just say, that crazy guy challenged me to do something to improve myself. Like, what is my next step? What can I do? And again, just like that slide a few moments ago, we saw the example of the 74-year-old. There's no excuse, right? I mean, if she could do it, why can't we, right? I mean, and so from this point, it's so important for us to just really step back and really be honest with ourselves. Take an objective look at ourselves and just say, okay, what can I control? Can I improve myself? And if so, how can I? What does that look like to myself? And that's, again, basically what physical and mental exercise is, because you're trying to take the best of both, physical and mental and put it together in terms of just really focusing on yourself and just improving everything in life. So with that, are there any questions? And by the way, when you do have a question, I'm going to repeat it so everyone else can hear just in case. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe you touched on timing for eating.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, so the question was, I touched on timing as far as eating goes, and can we elaborate on that? And one of the best 5, if you took a list of all the extra nutritional plans that there are, I don't like to use the word diet, but diet implies it's temporary, but I like the word lifestyle better. So to answer that question, intermittent fasting is one of the best lifestyle changes for healthier eating out of the top 5. There's also the DASH diet, there's Mediterranean diet, and there's a few others too that have to concentrate on those, and one of them was timing that I was talking about. The intermittent fasting is very important because what happens is, just to use for example, if I went to bed tonight and I ate my dinner at 6 o'clock and I ate a chicken breast and some maybe potatoes and went to sleep, and I thought I did really well. I avoided a cheeseburger and fries, or I didn't eat junk food. Well, the chicken was okay in that case because it's protein. But where I slipped up with, and again, potatoes can be generally healthy, especially if we eat them in the beginning of the day. If I waited till 6 p.m. at night, usually I'm not going to go out and I'm talking about myself. I'm not going to go out there and walk it off. So what happens in the morning when I go on the treadmill or the elliptical or what have you? Correct. Yes, exactly. The blood sugar will be down, but also what's going to happen is that those potatoes are going to be what's going to be my fuel source for getting through that workout first. Had I not had that and stuck to just protein and say had a lean chicken breast with kale and some what have you, green spinach, what would then happen instead is that when my body, when I'm burning calories, wouldn't have those carbs to go, and it would say, well, where can I burn the energy? And it will go to fat. So any fat that I have stored in, it's going to go after. And that's why intermittent fasting works for so many people. The concept of intermittent fasting, you've probably heard it before, but you have a ratio of a window of like, say, 18-6, meaning 18 hours, I'm not going to eat anything. Within 6 hours of 24-hour period, I'm going to eat. So in that case, like 2 p.m., I'm going to eat my first meal of the day. 8 p.m., I'm going to stop. And in those that's example of just 6 hours compressed, but 18 hours where I'm just burning. The body's just burning the body fat as fuel. And that's why that one works so well. And again, timing-wise, another example is if I use that same example and I said I ate at 10 p.m. a chicken breast and potatoes, that would be even worse off because that's too late in the evening. Because at that point, when I'm definitely going to go to sleep, and that's just going to sit there, right there, and just be stored with the extra body fat that I have. And then that's not good at all. They used to, again, the phrasing is, some of you will correct me or remember this better than I can, but you eat like a king in the morning, you eat like a prince during lunchtime during the day, and you eat like a pauper in the evening. Is that close to it? Maybe I might have diced it up a little bit there, but you get what I'm saying. Eat the biggest portion for fuel and energy, and then during the day, trim it down, especially if you're going to have carbohydrates. That's okay. Get it in the morning, but be sensible during the day and trim that down. Yeah, so that's kind of the timing concept of it. Yeah, my pleasure.
I want to add that even when I eat, I pay attention to how I feel, because sometimes when we eat something high carbs, whatever, it can make you really bleed out.
Yeah.
Like for example, I've gone to places like, here are some donuts. I mean, even if the donut just fades away, it feels like I call it a sugar rock. It literally weighs my stomach down. I don't like donuts because of the way I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, no, I just rather, So that's one thing I think of. How do you feel like only 30 minutes after you eat?
Very, very true. Exactly. So the point was, how do you feel after what you're eating? If you eat really bad food, then later on you're going to feel bad. It just makes sense. If you eat healthier food, you're probably going to have more energy and feel, in a better state, both mentally and physically. You're absolutely right. Food is just like a fuel, if you think of it that way. So when you fuel your car up, you don't want to put cheap, synthetics or what have you in there. You want to put nice, good, high octane or what have you, premium in that car, in that tank, so that way you're burning it off and that car is going to feel better, the engine's going to run. Just like your body, when you put better food into your body, then you will feel a lot better for sure. I mean, there's no question there's a correlation there, definitely. I mean, it just goes hand in hand. Yes, thank you, by the way. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. How important is stretching as you get older? It's way up there in importance. Arguably, stretching would be just as important as strength and cardio aerobic fitness as well. Because a lot of times, let me ask the question just by a show of hands, Anybody in here in the mornings wake up and you're kind of stiff and tight? That's what I thought. That's what I thought, right? Me included. I'm right there with you. Every morning when I wake up, first thing, I get up like this, and I'm like, oh, and then I walk, and I hear crack, crunch. It's just crazy. Stretching, to answer your question, yes, absolutely. Stretching should be done every day as much as possible. Yoga's, I mentioned earlier, yoga is a wonderful alternative. You could go on YouTube and type in 30-minute stretching exercise video, and you could just find just wonderful options and variations to do. And so on your stretching, you want to have good functional stretching. So for example, lower back, something that a lot of people have issues with as we get older. And it's important, as we know, if I was to pick something up off the floor, I wouldn't pick it up like this with my legs straight, because then I'm putting all the pressure on my back. But you'd want to bend down with the knees and pick up that child or grandchild or groceries. When you bend with the knees and pick it down, you know that you're doing it more functionally. Well, then, in that case, we should stretch our hamstrings during the day. We should hold on to something, or not hold on to something if we can. Challenge your balance. Do your quadricep stretching. Important, because if you hit all the primary group muscle groups, it's like a rubber band. If you don't stretch, it's going to really be contracted and constrict real tight. If we do stretch, it's one of the most therapeutic answers to living without pain and just having a better posture and just overall general better health.
Before exercise, after, do you stretch when you've done not exercise?
A good question, yeah. So when do you stretch is the question. Well, so for example, the quick answer to that is before an exercise routine, you want to do something called dynamic stretching. Dynamic means you're moving. So before I was to work out and go in, I might do some of this. I might do some leg knee highs. I might do some of this just to stretch it all out as I'm moving. Might do this motion here just to get kinetic dynamic energy going. When I'm done with my workout, I've finished and complete and burned the muscle group areas, I've had a good walk, then you do something called static stretching where you're not moving. So the example I just did, this is a great one to do after you're done, because then you could reach further. The muscles are already warmed up. So dynamic stretching helps because muscles are cold. You want to move before you do the workout, but at the end of the workout, it's generally best to do kind of a static stretch and just really feel a good stretch, and everything that I just worked out would really be key and helpful. Mm-hmm.
So, is that going to help me when I waddle, when I walk?
When you waddle, when you walk, the stretching?
I'm trying to not have a distance, and I waddle, but I'm past baby boomers, honey.
That's okay.
So what can I do to not waddle?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I have clients who ask me, and the question was, how can I improve my walking, and so to speak. But I have clients who will say, I don't want to use the cane or the walker. I encourage them to use it for many reasons. One is because it'll help with balance. If we have a walker and a cane, it's going to help us stay more stabilized. Two, if you have little children running around or what have you, they'll be hopefully better and more aware that not to run into you and knock us off balance. But to help with walking, some of the general things, as we age, we know that this looks like the general walking right here. I'm shuffling my feet, I'm putting my head down, my spine's curved over. And that's because we're trying not to fall and we're trying to concentrate. We should be doing the opposite. We should be looking up. When you first get your driver's license, we all remember this. My driver instructor said, don't look 5-10 feet ahead of you. Look far. Panoramic viewpoint, right? Peripheral vision, straight. And so I remember as a young kid, younger kid, I remember thinking, okay, that would help. But also as a ballerina, walk like a ballerina. There's a pin right here. Pull yourself up high. So pretend that string is pulling you up. That your head, you're up, you're always looking up. You're not looking down, you're looking up, because that actually helps you with balance. It actually helps give you a better sense and awareness. You bring your shoulders back, your chest forward, keep your their tummy tight, the core engaged, and take big steps too. Big steps as you're walking, so that way that improves the walking as you're going. It's the best way because then it just keeps everything in better alignment.
I don't know if I can do that.
Just try to practice. Challenge yourself functionally in a day. Like, for example, in a day, put an object on the floor and challenge yourself and step high over it. Turn around and then do it again. I'm keeping my chin up, my chest up, and just keep challenging yourself. You could get to that point where you just, you mentioned, again, I don't know if I can do that or I can't do that. we just got done talking about what can I do. I believe that if we left right now, you could do that. I really do. Does anybody in here not believe she can't do that? I don't think so, right? She can do it. Yeah, I think so. I think you could do it. I'm not just saying it. I do believe it.
You know, think about the cane, like a cane, for example, especially the 4-footed one.
Yeah.
If you're using that, it helps you, I think, kind of gain that confidence to try what he said. So you realize, okay, I can do this, or at least you can try. But by having that cane, you have a helper.
Yeah.
And I look at it that way because I had a stroke last year. And sometimes I use a cane, and I got the one with the 4 feet.
I got one of those.
You do? And sometimes what I do when I go places where it's kind of treacherous, I'll use it. I'll still try to walk by looking straight ahead because it's very tempting for me to look down because I tend to fall. So, but having that, what I call the helper, does help me to get out there and try to do it. Just a thought.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you.
If you're just gonna walk, say for 30 minutes, try, hopefully every day, of course that doesn't happen. And you have to do stretching or any kind of thing before. I'm not talking about power walk, but I'm not talking about a stroll either. You know,
Everyone's different. Yeah, the question is like, do you have to stretch before you go for a walk? But no, not necessarily. Like yeah, it just depends. Like,
I was going to say, because you were showing the way you were stretching, I have fibromyalgia and it triggers a pain in the left foot, and then I'm done.
mm-hmm,
There are days where I can walk around and I can walk and I can feel it gets to my pelvic floor. I can feel it, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting there. And then the next day or so, I start walking, and only like 100 steps over, it starts here and it starts shooting up my legs.
Oh, yes.
I'm done.
Yes. Yeah.
It's yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, certainly. Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, for example, you notice I wasn't here from the beginning. I can't be here when people show videos because I have hyperacusis. It's basically hearing sensitivity.
Oh, okay.
Tonsil spasms in the left side of my body. If I hear certain, I can't be in most places. Like that's why I can't go to. You can't pay me to go to the gym.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The weights and slamming. Mm-hmm.
I'll be on the floor crying. So there's a lot of limitations I deal with.
Certainly, yeah. But on that point, with all those limitations, I'll ask you: can you still? You're able to get your exercise in, though. I'll bet.
Yeah,
like, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
Some days I can. Like I said, I wish I could do swimming, but finding a pool for me is hard because you go to the gym, you have to pay for it. I can't go to the gym. I don't want to pay all that money just to use your pool. That's all I can use.
Certainly,
and
yeah.
If I have to run through that, I'm like, what is wrong with her? They're like, I'm like, but swimming, I like swimming because there's no pressure points like walking. And I usually swim until my core gets very worn out, which is the best. That's when you start burning your calories. Really wear
That's
out.
true. No, you're right. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I look really young, so I'm sure you don't qualify for this.
No.
But I was thinking, next year I qualify for silver sneakers.
Yeah, silver sneakers.
And that is something that I don't know that everyone's taking advantage of. The way I understand it, for my friends who qualify, it's free. You can go to certain gyms.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
I think Fitness 54, they have an indoor pool, and they do aqua aerobics as well year round. And One Life, I think, accepts it. Again,
Excellent.
I'm not
Good.
Sure I don't qualify yet, but I will next year.
Great. That's good.
Selling health insurance and Medicare wouldn't cover it.
Isn't that
Silver
something?
sneakers, yeah.
Right, I've heard
You just have to
that.
ask.
Right.
It doesn't hurt to ask, definitely.
Yeah, in my case, I'm not even getting Medicare, so it's kind of off the table. Well,
You look like you're in your 30s.
I'm 49.
Really? Well, you should go to
Let's a couple more questions. These two ladies, I think you were first, and then we'll do one more question. I think they're just about time, but yes.
What about food additives?
Food additives, like sweeteners and things like that, or
High fructose corn syrup,
yeah.
aspartame.
Those are the things to stay really far away from. Yeah, certainly. Correct, right, yeah. Arguably, it'd be better probably to drink a Coca-Cola with real 30-gram sugar than it would.
The real sugar's better for
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right about that. But good point. Yeah, so we have to be careful with that for sure.
One thing I see a lot now, even in ice cream, bioengineered food.
Yeah. The food, that's another hour. When I come back next time, the food industry is something that's really telling right now. And not to scare anybody, I don't know if anybody's seen this article, but they're actually thinking of a vaccine now for the foods that we're eating. That they're, so just be on the lookout. It has something to do with the synthetic meat. Yeah, the meats that have synthetics in it that they're wanting to push a vaccine. So just, if you see that, please be forewarned. Yes, ma'am. One last question, then we'll call it.
I was privileged to work out with the lady that you mentioned that was in her 70s 5 years ago.
Oh, that's great.
I was privileged to work out when she does it.
That's so wonderful. Wow.
About silver sneakers. I'm with AT&T Medicare.
Okay.
I was able to join Planet Fitness.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. I overexerted myself too much. I hurt myself a little bit when I first went there, but yes, I was able to join.
That's terrific. Wow.
It's free for the classic.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. That's excellent information. And again, thank you so much for everybody's time. I appreciate it. You guys were wonderful. It was nice to meet y'all. Yeah, absolutely. And on the way out, I wanted to give everybody a gift. So again, I promised as close to 2:30 out of here, so we're done. If you want, some of you I've met already. I know that. So I'm going to come around, and if you've already gotten one of these, please let me. Anybody who's gotten one of these last time that they were here, I know I recognize a few faces in here, but if not, I'll go ahead and give you an extra if you've already. This is a journal that, it's my pleasure. It's from the Journal of Performance Psychology. Absolutely, and it's a peer-reviewed journal that I wrote with a couple other authors a couple years ago. And perfect, good. So if you like data, if you like the numbers and percentages, like those, especially those last couple slides, then you'll probably like this because this is good information in terms of motivation. And this gets to the point also of the psychological benefits of exercise. Yes, and we touched on it a little bit of how psychologically important it is to work out and live healthier. So I hope you enjoy that. Yes, my pleasure. And again, nice to meet everybody. I hope to see you guys next time I'm here. So, thank you again. My pleasure. Y'all have a great weekend.
You're a doctor. You got your PhD?
Sports psychology.